Sri Krishnaya Paramatmane Namaha. Srimad Bhagavat Gita, Chapter 13. Kshetra Kshetrangya Vibhaga Yogam. Sri Bhagavan said, this body, Arjuna, is termed as the field Kshetra, and he who knows it is called the knower of the field, Kshetrangya, by the sages discerning the truth about both. Know myself to be the Kshetrangya in all the Kshetras, Arjuna, and it is the knowledge of the field and the knower that is of matter with it evolutes and the spirit, which I consider as true knowledge. What that field, Kshetra, is and what is it like? What are its modifications and from what causes what effects have sprung? And also who its knower, Kshetrangya, is and what is his glory. Hear all this from my in brief. The truth about the Kshetra and the Kshetrangya has been expounded by the seers in manifold ways. Again, it has been separately stated in different Vedic chants and also in the conclusive and recent texts of the Brahma Sutras. The 5 elements, the ego, the intellect, the unmanifest, the 10 organs of perception and action, the mind, and the 5 objects of sense, namely sound, touch, color, taste, and smell. Also desire, aversion, pleasure, pain, the physical body, consciousness, firmness. Thus is the Kshetra with its evolutes briefly stated. Absence of pride, freedom from hypocrisy, non-violence, forbearance, straightness of body, speech and mind, devout service of the preceptor, internal and external purity, steadfastness of mind and control of body, mind and the senses. Dispassion towards the objects of enjoyment of this world and the next, and also absence of egotism, pondering again and again on the pain and evils inherent in birth, death, and old age and disease. Absence of attachment and the sense of oneness in respect of son, wife, home, etc., and constant equipoise of mind both in favorable and unfavorable circumstances. Unflinching devotion to me through exclusive attachment, living in secluded and holy places, and finding no delight in the company of worldly people. Constancy in self-knowledge and seeing God as the object of true knowledge. All this is declared as knowledge. And what is other than this is called ignorance. I shall speak to you at length about that which ought to be known, and knowing which one attains supreme bliss. That supreme Brahman, who is the Lord of beginningless entities, is said to be neither Sat nor Asat. It has hands and feet on all sides, eyes, head and mouth in all directions, and ears all around. For it stands pervading all in the universe. Though perceiving all sense objects, it is really speaking devoid of all senses. Nay, though unattached, it is the sustainer of all nonetheless. And though attributeless, it is the enjoyer of gunas, the 3 modes of Prakriti. It exists without and within all beings, and constitutes the animate and inanimate creation as well. And by reason of its subtlety, it is incomprehensible. It is close at hand and stands afar too. Though integral like space in its undivided aspect, it appears divided as it were in all animate and inanimate beings. And that Godhead, which is the only object worth knowing, is the sustainer of being as Vishnu, the destroyer as Rudra, and the creator of all as Brahma. That supreme Brahma is said to be the light of all lights and entirely beyond Maya. That Godhead is knowledge itself, worth knowing and worth attaining through real wisdom, and is particularly abiding in the heart of all. Thus, the truth of the Kshetra and knowledge, as well as the object worth knowing, God has been briefly discussed. Knowing this in reality, my devotee enters into my being. Prakriti and Purusha know both these as beginningless and know all modifications such as likes and dislikes, etc., and all objects constituted of the three gunas as born of Prakriti. Prakriti is said to be responsible for bringing forth the evolutes and the instruments, while the individual soul is declared to be the cause of experience of joys and sorrows. Only the Purusha, in association with Prakriti, experiences objects of the nature of the three gunas evolved from Prakriti, and it is contact with these gunas that is responsible for the birth of the soul in good and evil wombs. The spirit dwelling in this body is really the same as the Supreme. He has been spoken of as the witness, the true guide, the sustainer of all, the experiencer as the embodied soul, the overlord and the absolute as well. He who thus knows the Purusha, spirit, and Prakriti, nature, together with the gunas, even though performing his duties in every way, is never born again. Some by meditation behold the Supreme Spirit in the heart with the help of their refined and sharp intellect. Others realize it through the discipline of knowledge, and still others through the discipline of action, that is Karma Yoga. Other dull-witted persons, however, not knowing thus, worship even as they have heard from others. And even those who are thus devoted to what they have heard are able to cross the ocean of mundane existence in the shape of death. Arjuna, whatsoever being moving or unmoving is born, know it as emanated through the union of Kshetra, that is matter, and the Kshetrangya, that is spirit. He alone truly sees, who sees the Supreme Lord as imperishable and abiding equally in all perishable beings, both animate and inanimate. For by seeing the Supreme Lord equally present in all, he does not kill the self by himself and thereby attains the supreme state. He who sees that all actions are performed in every way by nature, Prakriti, and the self as the non-doer, he alone verily sees. The moment man perceives the diversified existence of beings as rooted in the one Supreme Spirit and the spreading forth of all beings from the same, that very moment he attains Brahma, who is truth, consciousness, and bliss solidified. Arjuna, being without beginning and without attributes, this indestructible Supreme Spirit, though dwelling in the body, in fact does nothing, nor gets contaminated. As the all-pervading ether is not contaminated by reason of its subtlety, though permeating the body, the self is not affected by the attributes of the body due to its attributeless character. Arjuna, as the one sun illumines this entire universe, so the one Atma, spirit, illumines the whole Kshetra. Those who thus perceive with the eye of wisdom the difference between the Kshetra and Kshetrangya and the phenomenon of liberation from Prakriti with her evolutes reach the supreme eternal spirit. Thus, in the Upanishad sung by the Lord, the science of Brahman, the scripture of yoga, the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna ends the 13th chapter entitled The Yoga of Discrimination Between the Field and the Knower of the Field. The glories of the 13th chapter of Bhagavat Gita from the Padma Purana. Lord Shiva said, O Parvati, please hear the unlimited glories of the 13th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavat Gita, by hearing which you will become very happy. In south, there was a very large river of the name Tungabhadra, on the banks of which there is a very beautiful town of the name Hariharpur. There, the deity of Lord Shiva, known by name Harihar, is worshipped. One who has his darshan attains auspicious things. In Hariharpur lived one Brahmana by the name of Hari Dikshit, who was very learned and lived a simple, austere life. His wife was called Durakara by the people. The reason for this was due to her low-class activities. She would always speak to her husband in abusive language, and she had never slept with him. She always was rude to her husband's friends, and she would keep company with other men to satisfy her lusty desires. She was also addicted to taking various kinds of intoxicants. Seeing that the town was becoming more and more populated, she constructed a small structure in the forest where she could meet her lovers. One night, feeling very lusty and not having been able to find any lover to satisfy her lust, she went out into the forest to her meeting place to see if any of her lovers were there. Not finding anyone at that place and burning up with lust, she started to wander in the forest in the hope of finding someone to satisfy her lusty desires. After having wandered for some time and finding that her body, senses, mind was paining so much due to not being able to satisfy their lust, she became bewildered and sat down and started to cry. Hearing the sound of her crying, one hungry tiger who was sleeping woke up and reached that place very quickly. Hearing the tiger coming, the lusty woman got up and thinking to herself that surely someone is coming who would satisfy her needs, she all of a sudden saw the tiger arrive in front of her. He was about to rip her apart with his sharp claws. At that time, the lusty woman addressed the tiger, "O tiger, why have you come here to kill me? First you must tell me this and then you can kill me." That king of animals refrained from killing Durachara and laughed. Then he related the following story. In the south, there is a river of the name Malapaha, on the bank of which is the town of Muniparna. At that place, there is a famous deity of Lord Shiva known as Panchalinka. In that town, I had taken birth in a Brahmana family. Although I had taken such a high birth, I was still very greedy and had no control over my senses. I used to sit on the banks of the river and perform sacrifices for those persons who were not qualified to partake in such performances. I would also eat from the homes of materialistic persons. I would also collect more funds than necessary in the name of performing sacrifices and worship for the deity, and use the same for my own sense gratification. I would also criticize those Brahmanas who were strictly following the regulative principles, and I would never give charity to anyone. Slowly I became old. My hair turned white. My teeth fell out. My eyes became weak, but even still I did not lose my lust to collect and hoard more funds. One day, by mistake, I went to the house of some Brahmanas who were very cruel and expert at cheating to beg some food. When they set dogs on me, one of the dogs bit my leg and I fell over and very quickly died. After that, I attained this tiger's body and I am living in this dangerous forest. Fortunately, I am able to remember my last birth, and in this birth, I do not attack any devotee, sannyasi, or chaste lady. Only those sinful persons and unchaste women I take as my food. As you are the most unchaste and sinful woman, you will definitely become my lunch. After the tiger has finished his narration, he devoured that sinful woman. Thereafter, the Yamadutas threw her into the hell known as Duyadha, which is a lake full of stool, urine, and blood. And she had to stay in that filthy place for 10 million kalpas. After that, she was thrown into the hell known as Raurava, where she stayed for 100 manvantaras, after which she again took birth on earth as a female Chandala. Again, she lived in the same sinful way as she had previously. Due to her sinful activities, she got leprosy and also tuberculosis. By chance and good fortune, she once went to the holy place of Hariharpur and close to the temple of Parvati. She saw the great saint Vasudeva, who was always reciting the 13th chapter of Srimad Bhagavat Gita. From his mouth, she heard that recitation, and becoming attracted, she heard it again and again, and by that hearing, she was able to give up the body of a Chandala and becoming completely free and from the reactions of her past sinful activities. She attained a four-armed form similar to Lord Vishnu, and she was taken to Vaikunta. This concludes the 13th chapter. Om Namo Narayanaya. Sri Krishnaya Paramatmane Namaha. Sri Krishna 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 Krishna